The night was tense, the air thick with smoke and the distant thunder of artillery echoing across the Ukrainian steppe. For days, Russian forces had been pressing forward, attempting to reclaim a strategic village that sat along one of the most vital supply lines in the Donbas. But what they didn't know was that Ukrainian forces had prepared something extraordinary. Hidden in the tree lines, just beyond the sight of Russian reconnaissance drones, stood several American-supplied Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, their engines low, their crews silent, waiting for the moment when they would unleash devastation. The Bradleys had already made headlines in recent months, proving themselves more than capable of going toe-to-toe with Russian armor. But tonight, what would happen would go beyond any previous battlefield encounter. It would become one of the most shocking and cinematic clashes of the war. The Russians, confident after softening Ukrainian positions with artillery, pushed forward with a column of armored vehicles, T-72 and T-90 tanks in front, supported by BMPs and infantry trucks. Dust clouds rose into the night air as their engines roared, their commanders certain that this push would break through Ukrainian defenses. But Ukrainian eyes had been watching. Through thermal optics, the Bradley crews tracked every movement of the Russian advance. The gunner's fingers hovered over triggers, waiting for the order. The Ukrainian commander, his voice calm but edged with steel, whispered through the radio, "Target the lead." Then the heart of the column. "No mistakes. Wait for them to close." Every second felt like an eternity. The Russians drew closer, unaware they were walking into a trap. The lead T-70 crested a small ridge, its turret scanning left and right. The Bradley gunner inhaled deeply. Then, fire! The silence exploded. The Bradley's 25mm Bushmaster chain gun roared to life, spitting out fiery streams of tungsten rounds that tore through the lead Russian vehicle. Sparks and flames erupted as the tank ground to a halt, its crew scrambling to react. Before the Russians could even process what was happening, another Bradley fired a TOW anti-tank missile. The streak of light cut through the night and slammed directly into the side armor of a second Russian tank. A massive fireball erupted, shaking the ground. Chaos instantly consumed the Russian column. Soldiers screamed into radios, commanders shouted orders, but the Ukrainians had unleashed hell. Bradleys opened fire point blank, shredding BMPs and troop carriers. Explosions rippled one after another, as if the earth itself was splitting apart. One Ukrainian soldier described it later. It was like the night turned into day. Fire everywhere, Russian tanks exploding, men running in panic. The Bradleys didn't stop. They kept firing, one after another. It was like watching steel predators hunt.
But this was no easy fight. The Russians, though ambushed, were not about to give up. T-90s swung their turrets, firing back with devastating force. One shell landed just meters from a Bradley, sending shrapnel rattling across its armor. Inside, the crew was shaken but unbroken. They adjusted position, returned fire, and another Russian tank fell silent in flames. The battlefield became a storm of steel. Drones buzzed overhead, artillery shells rained down, and amid it all, the Bradleys surged forward, not just defending, but counterattacking. They maneuvered with deadly precision, flanking Russian armor, striking weak points, forcing the enemy to retreat into total disarray. The clash raged for hours, each side throwing everything they had. And then came the moment no one expected. As one Bradley crept closer to a burning Russian tank, its crew spotted movement, dozens of Russian infantry, attempting to regroup behind the wreckage. With brutal efficiency, the Bradley unleashed its machine gun, cutting through the ambush before it could begin. The Russians realized too late that they were not facing ordinary armored vehicles. The Bradleys were relentless, each strike more devastating than the last. By dawn, the battlefield was unrecognizable. Russian armor lay smoldering, their assault crushed. Ukrainian forces, bloodied but unbroken, stood victorious. And word spread fast across the front lines, the Bradleys had just rewritten the rules of war. What came next, however, would take this already insane battle to an even higher level. Because as the Russians tried to regroup for a second push, Ukrainian Bradleys weren't finished. They had one more ambush prepared. And when it came, the results would stun the entire world. The roar of battle had reached its crescendo. The forest clearing that had once been quiet and still now echoed with the rolling thunder of tank engines, the snap of heavy machine guns, and the crack of point-blank cannon fire. Smoke hung thick, curling around trees like a suffocating blanket. Inside his Bradley, Sergeant Marco's chest rose and fell like a piston. Sweat ran down his temple, mixing with grime. His gunner, Ilya, was still locked onto the sight screen, eyes bloodshot but steady. "Enemy flank is collapsing," Ilya whispered, voice trembling with both exhaustion and exhilaration. "Not yet," Marco growled. "They'll bring more." He was right. From the far edge of the field, the unmistakable shadows of Russian T-90 tanks lumbered forward. Their massive silhouettes emerged like predators, guns already leveling at the Bradleys. The Ukrainians, though bloodied, were not broken. The Bradley crews tightened formation, engines revving. Their commander's voice echoed across the comms. "Hold the line, make them bleed for every meter." The first T-90 fired. The shell screamed across the field, slamming into a dirt embankment just meters from a Bradley. The explosion rocked the vehicle, throwing dirt and shrapnel across its armor. Ilya reacted instantly, firing. The Bradley's 25mm Bushmaster cannon unleashed a storm of tungsten rounds. Sparks showered from the T-90's reactive armor. It staggered, its gun tilting upward as if in shock. Then the second Bradley fired an anti-tank missile. The missile streaked through the smoke, struck the T-90 dead center, and detonated in a brilliant orange blossom. "Target destroyed," someone shouted. Cheers erupted, but they were short-lived. Two more T-90s rolled into view, their turrets swinging with deadly precision. The Ukrainians were cornered. The Bradleys had fought with relentless ferocity, but their ammunition was dwindling. Every shot counted now. Inside the command Bradley, Marco clenched his fist. "We hold here. If we break, the village falls. And, if the village falls, so does the corridor." The village, barely 2 kilometers behind them, wasn't just another patch of land. It was a critical supply hub, feeding an entire brigade on the front. Losing it would tear open a hole in Ukraine's defenses. "Then we don't break," Ilya said flatly, his finger tightening on the trigger. The Bradleys spread out, forming a semicircle around the clearing. Every barrel pointed forward. The Russian tanks opened fire again, their shells ripping through trees, sending shards of wood flying like knives. A Ukrainian Bradley was hit. The shell punched through its side, flames erupting instantly. The crew bailed out under fire, scrambling across the dirt as machine gun rounds snapped around them. Another Bradley shifted to cover, spewing cannon fire to keep the Russians pinned. Marco's heart sank at the sight of the burning vehicle, but there was no time to grieve. His own Bradley shuddered as another near miss shook the ground. "Load missile," he barked. Ilya's hands moved fast, locking in the TOW. "Locked. Ready." Marco's voice was steady now. "Send it." The missile streaked out, cutting through the smoke. It struck the lead T-90. The explosion tore through its turret, launching it skyward in a fiery arc. The tank was silenced instantly. The second T-90 fired back, slamming a shell into the dirt only meters from Marco's Bradley. The shockwave rattled every bone in his body. For a moment, he thought it was over. But Ilya was already reloading. Firing again, the Bradley spat another missile. This time, the T-90 erupted in a thunderous blaze, its